Canada, a vast nation with a diverse landscape, is at the crossroads of environmental responsibility and economic prosperity. Canada, a nation renowned for its prolific gasoline and oil production, is also among the select few G7 nations with a carbon price. In 2015, under the guidance of Catherine McKenna, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, she urged citizens to embrace a groundbreaking carbon price initiative. This visionary strategy, cunningly labelled a pollution price, sought to align the nation's trajectory with global efforts to combat climate change. The policy, known as the carbon tax, imposes fees on fossil fuel combustion, igniting debates about its implications, efficacy, and economic impact. Against the backdrop of diverse landscapes and industries, Canada's approach emerges as both innovative and pragmatic, navigating the peculiarities between environmental consciousness and the economic intricacies of a nation deeply entrenched in the production of fossil fuels. A carbon tax is a fee imposed on burning fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and natural gas. The tax is levied on the amount of carbon dioxide, CO2, emitted when these fuels are burned, contributing to climate change. The basic idea behind a carbon tax is to price carbon emissions to reflect their environmental costs. Governments aim to incentivize individuals, businesses, and industries to reduce their carbon footprint by placing a financial cost on releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Canada has had carbon taxes since 2007, when Quebec introduced one in the energy sector. However, policy enforcement across provinces has been inconsistent due to changing governments and policy reversals. For instance, Ontario implemented a cap-and-trade system in 2016, only to have it overturned by a subsequent Conservative government led by Doug Ford in 2019. To address this policy instability and assure a consistent approach to combating climate change, the Canadian Parliament introduced the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, GHG-PPA, in 2018, commonly called the carbon tax. The Trudeau government then implemented it nationwide in 2019, aiming to provide a stable and uniform framework for carbon pricing across all provinces. The year 2019 marked the inception of this carbon tax policy, with an initial rate of $20 per tonne of carbon dioxide equivalent, CO2e, steadily ascending over time. The present rate, $65 per tonne, is slated to ascend to a staggering $170 by 2030. However, beneath this seemingly straightforward policy lies a web of intricacies that extend beyond a mere price tag. At its essence, the core principle propelling the carbon tax accurately reflects the environmental toll wrought by carbon emissions. Governments aspire to trigger a paradigm shift in behaviour by assigning a monetary value to releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This shift isn't confined to individuals alone. It extends into businesses and industries, all pivotal actors in the collective endeavour to combat climate change. The implication of this shift could manifest in adopting cleaner technologies, a more frequent embrace of public transportation, or the conscious choices individuals make about energy consumption. The potential dividends are substantial. Studies suggest that Canada's carbon tax could reduce emissions by up to 11% by 2030, contributing considerably to the country's ambitious climate goals. Moreover, the revenue generated by the tax can be used to invest in green technologies, infrastructure, and initiatives that support vulnerable communities. Furthermore, the terms used to describe this policy vary. A carbon tax is sometimes synonymous with a fuel charge, a price on carbon, carbon pricing, or even a greenhouse gas tax, GHG tax. The phrase carbon pricing, often known as the price of carbon, can lead to misunderstandings since, in contrast to the conventional interpretation of price, which links price to the quantity consumed, carbon pricing refers to the quantity of carbon released. When fossil fuels are used, a certain quantity of carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. This amount is known as carbon pricing. There is no denying that one of the leading causes of global warming is human activity. While there are individual things we can do to live more sustainably, like switching to a plant-based diet or avoiding fast fashion, governments must enact laws that will lower the amount of carbon in the atmosphere due to the scale at which any solution must be implemented. Herein lies the role of carbon taxes. Incentives to directly reduce these emissions are provided by carbon taxes. This system aims to achieve the goal of reducing Canada's emissions by 1/3 by 2030. Simultaneously, renewable energy providers are winning, enjoying a competitive edge. Canada tackles climate change with its innovative carbon pricing system by putting a price on carbon pollution. What sets this performance apart is its flexibility, allowing provinces to craft their systems, meaning they can carbon tax or cap and trade as long as they meet the minimum national standards. However, some provinces aren't keen on the concept, and others already have rules. Additionally, there are two ways Canada puts a price on carbon: a charge on everyday things like gas and heating fuel for homes, called the fuel charge, and the other applies to big industrial polluters. The current spotlight shines on a price of $65 per tonne of carbon dioxide, which is poised to ascend to $170 by 2030, to encourage Canadians to transition away from fossil fuels. Your fuel source of choice determines how much tax you will pay. The more emissions it produces, the more you will pay. For example, the carbon tax on home heating oil, irrespective of the price of oil, amounts to $0.1738 per litre. Furthermore, the cap and trade policy also establishes an annual limit on the amount of emissions permitted. Within that cap, businesses can then buy emissions credits every quarter. They can purchase credits from businesses with extra credits because they produce fewer emissions if they want to surpass that limit. The government would drop the cap annually instead of raising the charge, as with the carbon tax. But where does this money go? On the whole, Canada calls its program revenue neutral, since all revenues are given back to the province where they were collected. Through a rebate program, 90% of government money is given back to people. The other 10% is allocated to initiatives supporting governments, businesses, schools, and other award recipients in lowering fossil fuel usage. The policy ensures that the carbon price does not disproportionately affect lower-income people. However, depending on how you heat your house and how often you drive your automobile, you may wind up with more or less money. According to Professor Catherine Harrison, a political scientist at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, who researches carbon taxes, large owners who use fossil fuels for heating and drive gas-powered cars will spend more money than they make. According to reports, households using electricity for heating and hot water would gain more than $200 from the rebates, while homes using oil, before the exemption was introduced, could lose more than $400. However, because every province emits a different quantity of carbon, the rebate amounts vary based on the province in which you live and can only be claimed once per household. It will interest you to know that the carbon tax in Canada is not an isolated policy. It joins a growing movement of nations implementing similar measures to address climate change. The carbon pricing landscape is evolving rapidly, from the European Union's emissions trading system to China's national carbon market. Drawing parallels between Canada's approach and these international efforts offers valuable insights. While Canada's carbon tax may be relatively new and modest when measured against some European counterparts, its focus on rebates and nuanced provincial variations mirrors a pragmatic approach finely tuned to the country's diverse economic and political terrain. Yet, implementing the carbon tax unfolds against a backdrop of challenges. Concerns regarding affordability and fairness have been central to multiple debates. Critics argue that the rising carbon price disproportionately impacts low- and middle-income households, particularly those in rural areas with limited alternative energy options. In response to these concerns, the Canadian government deploys a rebate system. However, the efficacy of this system sparks ongoing debate, leaving questions lingering about its ability to compensate vulnerable populations fully. Diving deeper, the carbon tax proves to be a patchwork quilt rather than a uniform policy across Canada. While the federal government sets a minimum price, provinces wield the authority to craft carbon pricing systems. This dynamic has birthed a mosaic of approaches, with provinces like British Columbia embracing a carbon tax for over a decade, while others like Saskatchewan choose to remain outside the fold. This uneven playing field presents both challenges and opportunities. It allows for experimentation and tailoring of policies to specific provincial needs. However, it also creates concerns about fairness and consistency in achieving national climate goals. Beyond the immediate concerns of affordability and fairness, the carbon tax's implementation stirs political turbulence. Provinces like Alberta, heavily reliant on the fossil fuel industry, have fiercely opposed the policy, arguing it stifles economic growth and harms jobs. This opposition has led to legal challenges and threats of withdrawal from the national carbon pricing system. Meanwhile, provinces like Ontario, initially supportive, have backtracked on their commitment, citing public backlash and political pressure. This inconsistency creates uncertainty for businesses and undermines the policy's effectiveness. Despite these challenges, the carbon tax has garnered support from various sectors. Environmental groups advocate for its potential to reduce emissions and combat climate change significantly. Businesses, particularly those in the renewable energy and energy efficiency sectors, see it as an opportunity for innovation and market growth. However, navigating the economic currents stirred by the carbon tax proves to be a complex undertaking. While studies predict long-term benefits from transitioning to a low-carbon economy, short-term disruptions and job losses in specific sectors are inevitable. Carbon-intensive industries like oil and gas face increased production costs, potentially leading to job losses and reduced competitiveness. However, these challenges can be mitigated through investments in carbon capture and storage technologies and diversification into cleaner energy sources. The carbon tax prevents challenges and opportunities for other industries, like manufacturing and transportation. While increased energy costs pose a hurdle, they also incentivize innovation in energy efficiency and low-carbon technologies, potentially leading to long-term cost savings and competitiveness gains. The success of the carbon tax depends on finding a balance between environmental goals and economic realities. This involves implementing targeted support for vulnerable groups through well-designed rebate systems, ensuring affordability and a fair transition. Investing in green infrastructure and innovation is crucial for reducing emissions and creating economic opportunities. Collaboration with industries, addressing concerns while encouraging investment in low-carbon solutions is essential. Open and transparent communication about the policy's objectives and benefits is vital for gaining public trust and support. Ultimately, the carbon tax is not a magic bullet, but a significant step in a broader transformation towards a low-carbon future. Its success hinges on navigating complex political, economic, and social realities, while fostering innovation, collaboration, and a shared commitment to sustainability. The impact is evident in Vancouver, British Columbia, with a carbon tax in place for over a decade. Public transportation ridership has soared, with dedicated bike lanes and expanded bus networks making sustainable options more accessible. Residents are embracing energy-efficient appliances and home renovations fueled by rebates and incentives. While initial concerns about affordability persisted, the city's thriving green economy and targeted programs have mitigated the impact on vulnerable populations. The carbon tax has also spurred innovation in the manufacturing sector. Companies like Bombardier, a leading aerospace manufacturer, are investing heavily in sustainable technologies like electric and hybrid airplanes. This shift, driven by the carbon tax, positions them for future growth in a global market increasingly focused on environmental responsibility. However, smaller businesses in carbon-intensive industries face significant hurdles, requiring targeted support and investment in transition strategies. Several young professionals in different provinces have adjusted their lifestyles in response to the carbon tax. By opting for hybrid cars and bikes more often, and consciously choosing energy-efficient products, while they acknowledge the financial impact, they support the policy, believing it incentivizes sustainable choices and contributes to a healthier planet for her future. However, they understand the need for support for low-income families struggling with rising costs associated with essential goods. Finally, the carbon tax is essential to hold polluters accountable and drive the transition to a clean economy. While concerns about affordability are valid, well-designed rebates and social programs can address them. We must focus on the long-term benefits, a healthier planet, reduced climate risks, and a more sustainable future. In conclusion, the future of Canada's carbon tax depends on its adaptability to technological advancements and changing political landscapes. As global initiatives and climate actions evolve, adjustments to the carbon tax framework may become imperative. International agreements and collaborative efforts may influence the direction and scope of carbon pricing, necessitating Canada's alignment with emerging global standards. Within the domestic realm, a unified approach could enhance efficiency and effectiveness, foster significant emission reductions, and attract investments in clean technologies. The rising carbon price, if coordinated nationally, holds the potential to drive transformative changes and align the nation with its ambitious climate goals. Addressing affordability concerns through targeted rebates and social programs is paramount to maintain public trust and ensure a just transition. Simultaneously, supporting the transition of carbon-intensive industries becomes crucial for mitigating economic impacts and garnering widespread support for the carbon tax.